back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, so I'm here today to do my wrap up for the month of April. April was a fantastic reading month for me. I didn't read as many books as I have in the previous months, but the ones that I read were so good. In fact, I liked everything I read this month, except for one that I did DNF. But everything I actually finished, I really liked or loved. There were 3 5-star reads, 3 4.5-star reads, and quite a lot of 4s and quite a lot of 3s. And I just really enjoyed everything. So I'm really excited to tell you about them. Some of them you'll have seen reviews for, others you'll be seeing reviews over the next couple of days once I get around to editing them. So yeah, let's just settle in and let me tell you all about the books that I loved this month. So, first book was a slight disappointment, and that one was Autonomous. This one was one that I got sent for review, and I'd heard loads of my friends talking about it. I thought it would be really good. I picked it up. I was kind of enjoying it. It wasn't bad. But then I just kind of lost my jam a little bit with it. I found that I was not really reaching for it. I was always picking up something else. And so I kind of just wasn't feeling it, I guess. And I just kept putting it to the side and not picking it up. And then I just got to the point where I'm like, it's been a couple weeks. I haven't read anything else of this book. I'm just going to decide that it's not for me and it's not the right time. Possibly if I'd been in a different mood or mindset, it might have been better. But yeah, sadly it just didn't gel with me. It didn't suck me in as much as I wanted. So I ended up giving that one to my partner because he is quite into science fiction. So he might enjoy it more than I did. And I do say that a lot of my friends have liked it. So maybe it was just the mood I was in. But for me, that was a DNF. The next one I read was one that was very based in fairy tales. That was The HAZEL Wood. This one was quite an interesting read. It's one I read for a book club, though I didn't end up actually discussing it because I had to miss that book club in the end. But I definitely think it's got some weird quirks. It was okay, it was likeable, it had a few moments where I wish it would have been more detailed. It definitely felt very detached at times because of that fairy tale element, so I gave it 3 stars. The next one I read was Forging Divinity. This is the first in, I think, a series. I'm not sure how many books there are. I think there might be 2 at the moment, possibly a 3rd one coming. And this is the series that Andrew Rowe, who wrote Sufficiently Advanced Magic, started out with, so I think it's his debut. And I definitely enjoyed this. I listened to it on audio, but for me it wasn't as strong as his later book, Sufficiently Advanced Magic is, and I feel like there's the beginnings of what I really love in that book in this series, but it felt a little bit overdone in places and underdone in others. Fairly standard debut in fantasy. A lot of the things are really interesting, but they don't necessarily drag you into it as much as I want. And I think possibly he just fell into a couple of the traps that most beginners to the genre do, but obviously I know from reading his later books that he doesn't always fall into those traps and he's improved. So I may well continue on with the series. It's quite an interesting start and I will review it, but this one I gave 3 stars as well. The next book I read was the second one in a series, and this is a self-published series, I believe. The second book is called The Dagger of Aden-Dagaeth. I think I said that right. And the first one is Sefriel's Hand, so I'll put a link to my review of the first book because I really enjoyed that when I read it, and going back into this world, it took me a while because it is very huge. There's a lot of characters and threads and I had to sort of re-immerse myself, but once I did, I definitely enjoyed it. There are some moments where there's a lot of torture and things like that. It's quite gruesome in places. It definitely has some classic fantasy tropes and also some slower moments. But in general, it's a series that I do enjoy, and I think the second half in particular was a lot more dramatic and exciting than the first half, and I found myself drawn back in quite easily, so I gave that 3 stars. The next book I read was this one, Envy of Angels by Matt Wallace. This one was sent to me for review along with the rest of the books in this novella series, and I'm really happy that I have the whole series because I really enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun. It's about 2 people who get called in to help out with a culinary restaurant and they have to make dishes, but what they don't really understand when they take up the job is that there are supernatural elements at work and they actually serve the supernatural clientele. And this one is all about the morality of serving up an angel to eat. So I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun, very light-hearted, and definitely a good beginning to what could be a really good series. So I do intend to continue on with this series very soon, and hopefully I'll pick up the next one within the next few weeks, I suppose. But yeah, I would definitely like to continue this series. Really enjoyed the first, and I gave this one a solid 3 stars. The next one I audiobooked, and this was The Silk Roads. This is a historical non-fiction, so it is quite dense. It's quite a big book if you see it in person, but I listened to the audio, which I think broke it up a little bit and made it a bit easier. It details the history of the East from way back in sort of ancient times all the way through to beyond the Iraqi war and how problems with the oil sort of started all that. I really enjoyed the ancient sections. I thought they were great, really insightful, loads of stuff I'd never heard of, wasn't even remotely aware of, and I really liked that element. But for me, I think the more modern stuff is not my personal taste. I don't find it that interesting. So the second half of the book wasn't as interesting. Although there were some snippets that I liked, it was just a bit hit and miss with me. So I gave that one a 3.5. The next one I also audiobooked, and this is the first in a series. It is called It Takes a Thief to Catch a Sunrise, and this is a series by Rob J. Hayes. I really enjoyed the first one in this, and it feels very light-hearted, very amusing, very enjoyable. It's the exact sort of fun, thievery heist situation that I really like, and we follow two people as they get involved on a heist and they have to kind of work for this man. He's taken over all their bank accounts and tells them that they have to work for him, and they have to put on this really extravagant disguise and kind of immerse themselves in high society and pull off a heist essentially. And I really, really like it. I definitely intend to pick up the second one and read it. I don't think the second one is on audio from what I can see, just the first, but that's a real shame because I really like the audiobook narrator, so I'd still recommend listening to the first. But yeah, I will pick up the second one probably on Kindle or something like that so that I can read it and finish up that duology. And then I probably plan on reading pretty much most of Rob J. Hayes' books because they are so enjoyable. So far I've only read his sort of light-hearted fantasy. I think he does have some that are more in the grimdarky vein, so I might go on to those, but I'm definitely enjoying his stuff so far, and I gave that a 4 stars. Sticking with the 4-star theme, I then picked up Paternus. This one is Rise of Gods, the first one in the series, and I really, really enjoyed this too. I've done a full review on this and I just loved it. It was filled with so many different mythologies, divinities, deities, so many crazy ideas, and yet he manages to pull off a really fantastic story with some very human characters, some very raw and emotional moments, and it felt very action-packed and punchy and fast-paced and pretty much everything I like. So I ended up giving this a solid 4 stars as well, and I would definitely recommend it. And if you want to know more, check out my review, which I'll link. Another book that I ended up audiobooking in the month of April was Grey Sister by Mark Lawrence. I picked this up on audio because it's not actually out in the UK yet on any other format. It's just out on audio, and of course, if it was coming out, I wanted it. So I decided I would just go ahead and listen to it, and I'm really glad I did. It was the same narrator who I really liked from the first book, and I also just found the story very easy to get back into. I think this is a really fun sort of girl power, very exciting series with some really great characters, some lovely moments, and a lot of really cool magic ideas. It definitely is a series that I'm really anticipating the 3rd book in the series when that comes out. Another 4-star read. So now moving on to the 4.5-star read. So this is where things get super duper exciting because I would highly recommend all of these to you. Although I recommend all the others I've just mentioned as well. These ones are the ones that I completely loved. So the first one of those is Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham. I've done a review of this. It's in the same review as Paternus, so I'll link them together. And I just loved this book. It was so interesting. It's set in a really sleepy little town where one day all of the people just suddenly go unconscious for about 24 hours. Then they all come back to normal. No one knows why. There's no sort of explanation given. And then a couple months later, all of the women of childbearing age are pregnant, and it's kind of the story of them and what happens to the town and how people receive the news that everyone is pregnant suddenly, and where this pregnancy came from for everyone is different. So it's a really interesting look at the human psyche and how people band together in scary situations and what people will go to, the lengths they'll go to hide and cover up things, and I really enjoyed it, so I definitely recommend it. 4.5 stars from me. Another one that I gave 4.5 stars to and that I loved the series for is this one, An Argumentation of Historians by Jodie Taylor. This one I believe is the 9th one in the series of the Chronicle of St. Mary's, and I really love this series. It's one of my all-time favourites. It's about tea drinking, biscuits, travelling through history, exploring time, getting away from time police, getting away from people who want to abduct you through history, sorting out the troublemakers who go back in time and try and ruin the timeline, and finding out what really happened in the past. and it's a bit of that with everything, and it's just so funny, so witty, so intelligently done, and I absolutely love her work. Of course I will continue to read this series. I probably might pick up some of her other books because I know she does a couple of other books in different series as well, so I might pick up some of them because I just seem to absolutely love this author, and I would thoroughly recommend this series. If you want to know more, I'll link my review of the series as a whole down below because it was great. But I have reviewed this one too, so I'll link that if it's up, otherwise it'll be up very soon. And then another one that I am super excited about is this one, The Poppy War. It's come out really recently, and this book was exceptionally good. I can only compare this in a way to Ken Liu's Dandelion Dynasty, because that book and that setting of that book is very similar. So it's based in China, and it takes a lot of influence from Chinese history and culture, and just the lifestyle of living in China is very rooted in that, and it feels very authentic, and I just genuinely loved that culture and the way that it was described. We do follow a young girl as she goes to a school where she takes a test and she gets in, and then she grows up and she's in training there. The story itself is just really fleshed out. It's a military fantasy, which is not something I tend to enjoy, but I did with this book. I thought it was done excellently. The character is given the time to develop and grow in your mind, and she becomes someone you really care about quite quickly. And although she makes some rash decisions and she does some things that irritated me, I still really enjoyed her as a character, and I thought she was really interesting, and she made some really good moves, and there's a lot of moments where she's questioning herself and she doesn't quite know what the right course is, but she makes some really interesting moves with those decisions, and she has some great magic that she can pull on later on in the story. And I think this book is only the beginning, because the climax at the end is incredibly crazy, and then I assume there will be more because there's a lot of questions and things that we still need to resolve, and I'm just super excited to continue on with this series. I think this is a debut, and if that's the case, it was a really impressive debut. I really enjoyed it. So I gave this a 4.5, and I would thoroughly recommend it. If you want to know more, look out for my review, which will be coming very soon. But yeah, genuinely absolutely love this book. And now moving on to the 5-star reads of the month. So of course I recommend all of these. The first one I have to recommend is this one, Record of a Spaceborn Few. Of course you guys knew that this was going to get 5 stars. It is by Becky Chambers. It's her newest book. It comes out in July, and this one follows the Exodus fleet. It is a fantastic story. It's kind of loosely connected to the others in that it's set in the same universe, and there is one very small tie to another character, but genuinely you don't have to have read any of her other books at all to understand this. It is completely standalone. It can be read entirely on its own, and it is fantastic and emotional. It talks about the trials of adjusting to a new way of living. It talks about human society and what it means to be human, and it looks at that from an insider and outsider perspective. It's got some really emotional moments, some beautiful characters, some really interesting twists that I didn't see coming, and I just loved it. So of course, it got 5 stars. And yeah, I mean, it's Becky Chambers. She is fabulous. And then the final 2 books that I have to show you also got 5 stars and also are by the same author, so I thought I would just show you them together because why not? And those are these 2. They're in the same series. The first one is After Atlas. This one I've had for ages and ages, hadn't read it because I was saving it. It's by Emma Newman. She's one of my favourite authors. I didn't want to run out of things to read by her, so I saved this one for ages, but then this one was coming out, the newest one in the series, and I thought I probably better read After Atlas so that I can read the new one. So I read After Atlas, and After Atlas, again, this is a series where you can jump in at any book. You don't have to have read the one before. The first one that was in this series is called Planetfall, the second is After Atlas, and the third is Before Mars. And you can start with any of them. They'll all be fine starting places, but they all do have links because they're all set in the same universe, and some of the characters cross over in these a little bit more so than the Becky Chambers series, but it's a similar idea where you can just come in wherever. and I really enjoyed this one. It took a different turn. It was about a kind of crime investigator investigating a murder and what had happened and finding out about it, but it's set in this future where technology is incredibly advanced from what we have today, and there's a lot to learn and love. And then I just found that I really got drawn into this story. I really enjoyed the characters, and the voices of the characters felt very real and very much pulled me in, so I enjoyed that a lot, and I feel like I really connected with the mindset of the character. I understood them, I understood their decisions. What I think Emma Newman does incredibly well is just writes about humanity in futuristic or technologically advanced situations, and I think she does it excellently. So this one got 5 stars from me. And then promptly, because this one was coming out really soon, I decided, of course, I needed to pick this one up. So I then went on to Before Mars, and I loved this. I think this is my favourite of the Planetfall novels, although I have given After Atlas and this one 5 stars. I think this one's slightly more, because this one deals with a woman who goes up into space, and while she's there she has postnatal depression. She talks about that a lot. She also has struggles with her husband and her relationship, and she's also in space. She's a geologist, she's an artist, she's there on her own merit, she's there to kind of learn about Mars and just understand it, and she's great as a character, and she gives us a real insight into what it's like to be someone struggling with these problems but also be doing something really crazy and something that people on Earth are in awe of and amazed by. And I just really enjoyed the characters. Again, I think Emma Newman just does impeccably good characters. I absolutely love the way she writes. I think she's excellent with all of her books that I've read so far, which is all of her books, and she just genuinely every time wows me. She's probably for sure one of my favourite science fiction authors right now. Her and Becky Chambers are miles ahead of the rest for me, publishing right now anyway, and I love them both. So again, this one got 5 stars too. And that is everything I read this month, and I had such a good month. So I hope that May will be just as good, if not better. So far in May, I haven't done a TBR for the month of May because I am doing my Getting Graphic Readathon, which is on Saturday the 5th. And then I'm also doing the one readathon to rule them all, which is up until the 12th of May. So obviously you guys have seen the TBRs that I did for those two. So you don't really need to see another TBR just for May when it's only going to be half a month, and I'll probably be carrying over anything I don't finish. So I'm not sure I'll do a TBR, but I will definitely be reading books, and of course you will hear about them as and when I finish them. So do let me know in the comments what you guys have been reading. What was your favourite book of the month? Are there any here that you plan to pick up? And I will see you very soon in my next video. Thanks guys, bye!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.